Well, that was the winning touchdown on Mizzou's homecoming come-from-behind victory against Auburn on Saturday afternoon. With just 46 seconds left, Jamal Roberts comes out and nails it from about 4 or 5 yards out. Fabulous closing drive, 95-yard closing drive. Truly amazing. And hats off to the Mizzou Tigers. Brady Cook comes in late in the third quarter after being out for most of the game. And looked like nothing had phased him. I don't know what they did, Stephanie, but they gave him something. They gave him an injection of something. I don't know. It was great.
I think it was just an injection of MIZ. I guess he did a post-game interview.
ZOU.
Exactly. He did a post-game interview, and it was he got really emotional during the interview and just said, to get hurt and to be able to come back. And Mizzou just means so much to me. I didn't want, homecoming to go like this, and I knew I needed to get back on the field. And so you could tell how much
it was something.
The team itself and the other players on the team mean to Brady Cook, and he really, he said, I played through stuff before, and then you wonder, oh my gosh, was he really, hopefully he didn't do any more damage.
Yeah, right. Well, adrenaline certainly can blunt pain. We've seen, Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl just playing out of his gourd with an injured ankle a few years ago. So, great victory for Mizzou. We have some other highlights. We'll be playing some of those through the morning. John Marsh, Chase Daniels was in for the homecoming and inducted into the Hall of Fame as well.
Chase is really good about coming back for homecoming. Yeah. It's the rare homecoming where you don't see Chase, and he oftentimes swings by our Wake Up Mid-Missouri tailgate.
Yeah. Well, and he was hanging out with Senator Eric Schmidt in one of the boxes above the field. I saw photos of the two of them hanging out together.
And John Anderson, who's a Sports Center anchor, was induced with Chase into the Missouri Hall of Fame as well. So,
as well as Chief Justice Mary Rhodes Russell with the Supreme Court.
Yeah,
we got to announce her during the parade.
So we saw her. Yeah,
she was in the Mizzou Hall of Fame coming through. I think they do 3 inductees this year. I'm pretty
big
sure.
Parade. Boy, it was a big, beautiful parade. It was a lot of fun.
Caleb Rowden didn't come by on any floats and announce another run for office like he did last time around, did he?
We didn't see that. We didn't see that.
Sure didn't, but we saw tons of our friends, both on both sides of the aisle, but a big turnout from Republicans and also bigger than I expected from the Democrats. And we saw folks like Barbara Buffaloe and
saw Mayor Buffaloe.
Brianna Lennon and some others. So it was a big deal. And I don't know that they've done this in the past, but they tried to they grouped them all together.
Yeah, I know.
And so
we were trying to pick them out as they're walking down, throwing things, and some were on the other side of the car, and it was hard to find everyone. But we tried to shout out to everyone we could on both sides of the aisle. So it was a big deal. I understand that the Palestinian protesters were not disruptive at the beginning of the parade. I think they were sort of off to the sidelines, a few signs, but I know that was one of the concerns floating around before the parade. We didn't see any of that.
Yeah, they were
floating around.
They were set to have a float, but then I think the university put the kibosh on that. So they, but yeah, everyone seemed to be in very good spirits. We didn't smell as much recreational marijuana as we normally do. I think that had to do with the timing of the parade. It was quite early.
Well, that's because Kamala Harris isn't in office and black men weren't enforced down there because, she told black men she's going to legalize weed. What a condescending. I still am reeling from that comment last week. We're going to give you special unconstitutional forgivable loans only for black people, and and in the same breath, we're going to decriminalize weed. I mean, hello? I don't get it. Well, speaking of the political scene, of course, there is now just a little over 2 weeks. I mean, we're just essentially 2 weeks away. And things are, of course, very tight, according to the polls. For the first time in the Real Clear Politics average on the swing states, Trump is up by a point across all the states and the whole average all put together. So, but on the other hand, he makes what I think is a faux pas, and I just got to play it for you. So for Alan and all of you out there who think I don't call balls and strikes,
oh boy.
Here was a huge faux pas when the Kamala Harris campaign has now become, the closing argument is, and only is, Donald Trump crazy, Donald Trump unhinged, Donald Trump unfit for service.
Orange man bad.
Variations thereof. You're right. And then Trump says this.
But Arnold Palmer was all man, and I say that in all due respect to women, and I love women. But this is a guy that was all man. his man was strong and tough. And I refuse to say it, but when he took showers with the other pros, they came out of there, they said, oh my God.
You know, I hope his handlers get a hold of him, because the unfiltered Trump is at the same time that double-edged sword of something we find charming, and at the same time we find bothersome. At least people who he needs to at least stay home, if not come out and vote for him. That doesn't help things, because on the Sunday news shows, they were all over that
And
yesterday.
I didn't see a whole lot of that. All I saw was Trump at McDonald's. That was all I saw.
Yeah, but
yesterday.
on the news shows, they were on that, and they were about how.
Do you think anyone on those news shows is undecided? I think that number is 0.
I don't know. It's just look. I think as we get older, we get less filtered. Sort of like, que sera, sera. I'm going to say what I want, and I think that's in a way something charming about Trump, that he does shoot from the hip. I think people find that refreshing about him, that he's not, every word isn't measured and calibrated, and he doesn't need a teleprompter to communicate. I will grant that till the cows come home.
And he's obsessed with size. I mean, the hand thing and this. I mean, we just know this about him. I mean,
well, you look at Mar-a-Lago. I mean, everything he does is big. Everything he does is gaudy and
my takeaway
overstated.
On it was, I just thought maybe he was thirsty and wanted somebody to bring him a big half lemonade, half iced tea.
That's what it was.
An Arnold Palmer.
There you go. That is a good drink. That in the can you can get the Arnold Palmer half and half. You know, it's a good one. It's a good one. So that was going on this weekend. Of course, the Chiefs had a big win yesterday. That was good to see. And so there's a lot going on. And speaking of Mayor Buffaloe, we saw her at the parade.
We did.
And she'll be in a little bit later at 7:35. Scott Faughn joins us at 7:08. I know he's been focusing, Steph, on the non-candidate issues.
Yeah.
Sort of assuming that, the GOP candidates are going to probably, I think we should, I think that's good, but I don't want complacency to get in the way. Lucas Kuntz was there in the parade. Why does Lucas Kuntz, if you're Lucas Kuntz advisors, can I advise you on something? I know that you don't really care.
And I'm sure they're listening to this program.
I found the presentation very uninspiring. Everything about the banners are all black background. Or I'm not colorblind, am I? Wasn't it all black?
Was it black and gold maybe?
Black and gold, but it was, I don't know, it was just sort of dark and it was dreary. And I don't know whether that's his regular campaign.
Wasn't Caleb Rowden like black and gold?
Caleb, I don't know. Sorry, Caleb, I love you, but
now
black is a down color. I
think Kurt Schaefer was doing black and gold too. I mean, I think for a lot of folks in Boone I think for a lot of folks in Boone that's like a big thing.
I know, but I'm just saying, if that's his campaign theme and you're a political candidate, I would think that different colors.
So what color would you pick, Randy? If you were
look at Jesus has a white background with, I don't know, is it blue or whatever? But I mean, it's got, nice font. Most people, Amanda Old's sign, I've got that up in my yard. I've got Jesus' sign up in my yard. I've got Andrew's sign up in my yard. And I don't know, they just are a cheerful, uplifting,
Am I shocked
bright
to hear
colors.
that you're a traditionalist, that all signs should be red, white, and blue? Not at all.
You got a problem with that?
Do you like Mike Kehoe's signs with the green?
It's okay.
It's kind of his signature color.
Yeah, it's
Stephanie,
good.
who was it a few years ago that did their yard signs in bright blaze orange?
Oh, gosh, you're right. I don't know. And see, I think it's always tricky for women, too, because sometimes women will do pink, which I think could be played well to distinguish you, but usually you don't see that.
I'll proudly wear the red, white, and blue. Sorry.
Look at the primary, though. I mean, in some of these races, there were 8 candidates. Everyone's doing red, white, and blue. Like, why not do something to distinguish yourself?
All right. 573-874-9390.
Who would have thought that the color of political signs would be what brought us down?
It just appeared to me that the Republicans it was a brighter presentation. Not that I'm biased or anything, but I mean,
not at all.
But the Democrats, it was great to see the Democrats out there.
Only neon colors, Hannah, from here on out.
Yeah.
That's it.
I'll be redesigning our show logo. Stay tuned.
Yes.
That's a good question for our listeners. Do the preponderance and or the colors and or the font and or the imaginative or not design of political signs and bumper stickers really make a difference. I mean, they must. I guess it's just having your name there, just a presence.
Look at how iconic, the MAGA hat is. I mean, that is political branding, and it's
that's true.
I mean, it's huge. In fact, I, that I'm kind of obsessed with Elon, and
Since when?
He's paying off the voters.
Got a thing for him?
Oh yeah, he's potentially. People are real mad and are saying that he's violating the law by doing that, John. But he wore that
$1,000,000.
He wore that black MAGA hat a couple weeks ago and said he was dark MAGA. So of course I had to get online and buy the dark MAGA hat, which hasn't shown up yet. But my political texts, I shouldn't have done it because I am getting 1,000 texts a day. But yeah, John, are you entering to win the $1 million from Elon?
Why not? Isn't it like a daily thing or something?
Every day he's giving away $1 million, apparently.
Can you believe
you
it?
talk about political signs. I know we're hard up against a break. The one that kind of resonated with me that got my attention was Vivek Malak's that just had his first name on him.
I think it's smart.
Yes. Right.
It's like Oprah.
That
Who else?
gives you,
Cher.
yeah. Well, I mean,
Good analogy.
but look at celebrities. I mean, how many celebrities are just one name, right?
Kanye.
You have Usher, Lizzo. I mean, one name, right?
Wow. Go, Randy.
Good.
I'm a stealth culture guy. You don't know this. I got to tell you later about a great movie we saw. Did this movie? It was so good. So good.
I
don't have time to
really
talk
good
about
movie in a long time.
well, we don't
The
go out
Sound
and
of
watch
Music
many
or
movies.
something.
With that, we're going to go to the break, and we're just going to
Stay
Here
tuned.
I am being dissed right in the early part of the week. Come to my rescue. Tell me what movies you like to see over the weekend, gang. No, I have a great movie. I'm going to tell you about it at 6:50. At 6:35, Mike Murphy, who's in for Brian Houseworth this week, is going to tell us about a couple of, I feel like it's old news anymore, or repetitive news, shootings in Columbia over the weekend.
Now, of course,
Paying for their food.
yeah, of course, the Democrats now are saying that McDonald's was actually closed and that was like a whole setup. Of course, like if you're a presidential candidate at McDonald's, there are extra measures that have to take place. But certainly he got a lot of love on social media for all of that. And I think, and he was kind of a stick at Kamala because what'd she say? I used to work at McDonald's and they have no records of her ever working at McDonald's. He's like, now I've actually worked at McDonald's. So.
Did you see him at the fry station with the little kid?
Yeah.
He's a little pimple-faced kid who's showing him now, I take this basket and then I empty the basket and I mix up the fries. It was hilarious.
And especially like from a guy who's like, from a guy who, doesn't email, right? Has lived a very privileged life. It was a cute moment. And I think as we get closer to the election, it's stuff like this, like connecting and being authentic that I think people really resonate with people. We've got 15 days now to the election, which is hard to believe. Wow. In Missouri, early voting begins tomorrow. No excuse absentee. So if you want to head down to your clerk's office tomorrow, I did see in other states where on their first day of early voting, people said, I've never seen early voting like this. So I think people are getting the message to get out and to vote early. Let's talk about foreign affairs first. Israel conducted a wave yesterday of airstrikes across Lebanon. They were targeting it's a U.S. sanctioned bank, or it's kind of like a bank, but like financial services provider that the U.S. says is used by Hezbollah. So that occurred yesterday. At the same time, if we're talking about countdowns, the other countdown we're watching is this congressional countdown to another funding deadline. I believe that's they kicked the can last time they were in D.C. till the middle of December. Of course, they've been out on the campaign trail and they aren't returning until after the election. And there are a lot of things that are now stacking up on their to-do list besides just this funding plan. They've got there's a lot of conversations around disaster loans and FEMA funding that have bubbled up with all of the hurricanes. And folks are saying we need this money now. So that's on their plate. And then also there's been a lot of discussions about veterans affairs and funding for veterans. So that on top of the stopgap bill will have Congress really tied up and on the hump as soon as they get back in town. So
I don't know. It seems like that the congressional races are just like a 24/7, even when they're in their district and when they're not, a fundraising thing. So it's hard for them to stay focused on that, especially in a season like this. So they're going to have a lot of catch-up work to do.
They have a lot of work to do. But, of course, it's fun when they're on break because we get to see some of them back in Missouri. So I know Hannah said she got to she saw a lot of pictures of Schmidt at the homecoming parade this weekend. So it does mean that they get to spend some time in their district, which I think we like to see. But it means that there's a lot to do when they get back to D.C.
Did you see this very concerning report about a leak from within the Pentagon defense, a community or an intelligence community about plans that Israel was making to counterattack Iran for their October 1st attack on Israel? And, a lot of, exposing that we spy on Israel. And I don't think that's anyone's big secret. But, there's a lot of concern about that. Who has, if it's true, who's infiltrated the defense establishment, the intelligence establishment to let out the secrets for Israel? It couldn't be one of those pro-Palestinian, pro-Gaza people, could it?
I think there's real concerns about intelligence right now and who's spying on who. But we've got, I think we've got an election coming up.
Yes.
And I think we wouldn't have as many concerns
That's right.
about foreign affairs right now if we were in a different place. But certainly tensions are really high right now. And whether or not it's leaks or the actual conflict, I think people are on high alert.
Well, the take home for me from this kind of a story is when you have a mindset within an administration that is anti-Israel, is it any surprise that there are people within your administration who will try to undermine Israel? Hello? You don't have to be
Fair
a
point.
rocket, you don't have to be Elon Musk to figure that one out. Elon is a piece of work. We're going to have to talk about him. He's out there solo campaigning for Trump. It's amazing to see. We're going to talk about some crime in Colombia when we come back. Stay tuned.
I think just local news is like the most important stuff to me, even though it's kind of like bad stuff going on around me, but it's the most relevant to me.
Where I come from, there's an old plowboy out turning up dirt where
Fred Warner. Oh, what a run. Now dances for foul. He's still in bounds. Patrick Mahomes racing to the end zone, and he's out of bounds. They mark him at the 4. How did he do that?
Did you see that run by Patrick Mahomes yesterday late in the game? I think that was a 4th and 5, wasn't it, Mike Murphy?
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. And he sort of tiptoed down the sideline. He kept deking him with throw like he was going to shuttle past the ball. It was a great one.
A different thrill every week with Patrick.
Yeah. And, they're using, it sounds like they're using Kelsey more and more as a decoy to draw coverage off, and then they throw it to the other tight end, right? What's his name? Gray, I think, number 83. So, again, the Chiefs now, 6-0. So they find a way to keep getting it done.
They are now the only unbeaten team in the NFL.
Yeah.
Didn't realize that. Wow.
Vikings lost yesterday.
Did they? Okay. So who's their next opponent? Do we know?
Vegas. In Vegas. What do they call those guys?
The Raiders?
The
Raiders.
All right. So, San Francisco just didn't seem to be playing the game. There were more tip balls and balls floating up in the air up for grabs yesterday, and I've seen it in a long time.
And that last kick or little tiptoe, whatever you want to call it, from the Niners there at the very end of the game, I don't know about you guys, but we were thoroughly entertained by how poorly that went.
Oh, you mean the...
It looked like they attempted like an offside
the little
sort of
it was
thing.
like...
And he just kind of barely tipped the corner of it, and so it just spun for a couple yards and fizzled out.
Yeah. Looked like the old tabletop football. Remember that, guys, when we used to play that with the little... You fold up the paper, and then you kick it at the other end, and you flip it down, and you score if you get it off.
The little uprights with your
Yeah,
thumb.
isn't that hilarious? Yeah. All right.
Well, did you see what they did to Travis Kelce's girlfriend I think it was yesterday.
No.
They flew an airplane over her concert in Miami with like one of those banners. We saw a bunch of those at the homecoming parade. And it just says Trump 2024, ready for it, cat lady, MAGA.
Whoa. Oh, Lord. Look at that. Well, the political elbows are out and the knives are sharp. There's no doubt about it. So, Mike, a little more criminality in the area yesterday or over the weekend.
Couple shootings over the weekend. Hate to say it.
It's getting to be routine.
Kind of is. It kind of is. And from a news standpoint, they all start to run together. And every Monday we're in here talking about it pretty much.
I was talking with one of the judges. Stephanie and I were down there on the PA at Broadway, and what was that other street? I don't know. Ninth? Okay. We were just down from the Keyhole, just east. And I was talking with Dr. Bruce Runyon, who's here, just moved here a couple of years ago from Texas, and he's in the accounting or the business school there, teaches accounting. And, we were just talking about the growing pains of a city and how important it is from a business perspective and from a, just from a general, the general welfare to get a handle on safety, public safety. And how that's really the talk of the town these days, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, I started on, Saturday night. So Saturday night in Cosmo Park, late at night, though, around midnight, police are calling it a large unauthorized gathering. Mm-hmm. A man was shot, taken to the hospital. He's in non-life-threatening injuries. And then last night out on Clark Lane again, I think Clark and Boyd.
Wow.
Yeah.
Boyd Lane, that's been that little has been a little nucleus
it's a bad
for a
pocket.
lot of trouble.
It's a bad pocket out there. Brian Hausworth lives right there. He moved out there several years ago, and now he's coming through crime tape every morning, it seems like, or often enough.
Randy asked Brian on Friday if he was packing when he's out on the golf course.
Brian refused to answer. He took the fifth.
So this man was seriously injured. I'm waiting for an update from the hospital. He had he was shot in the head, a life-threatening injury.
No. Wow.
Yeah. So that was a bad one last night.
That's a shame. I mean, you feel sorry for people that, the 99% of people that live in these communities that are just trying to go to work and have their kid's birthday party and put a little food on the table and clothes on their back. And, they live in a crime-infested area like that. And you just hope it's not going to expand and infiltrate the whole area. I mean, it's bad enough for those little pockets. But in Cosmo Park, we've seen problems there before.
Yeah, we have. And we will again. They said it's an unauthorized, this made quite the rounds on social media. It's an unauthorized gathering, but the parks are open, and it doesn't have to be authorized unless it's over 200 people, the way I understand it. Okay. So I can't imagine it being that many people, but it might have been. But the police are saying they called it an unauthorized event. And so there's a big crowd out there late at night. And, the truth of the matter is, this is no commentary on any kind of gun laws or anything, but the truth of the matter is if there's a gathering like that, some huge amount of people are carrying guns. Yeah. So when an argument breaks out, the guns come out. And that's how a lot of people are ending up with gunshot wounds.
Is it Pollyanna of me to think that somewhere along the line that we've had a gap in the upbringing of our children for whomever that's responsible, in that's not the best and first way to solve an argument? I mean, where have we come to the point in America where that's sort of accepted behavior in certain communities?
I think I think it's become part of the culture that you just carry a weapon now, especially if you're involved in crime, which many people are, of these victims and the people who end up getting charged and convicted and put in jail for a little while. We see these people come out of jail and they're back in. They immediately have guns again. So I think gun culture is just it's a different culture. It's part of the crime culture, really, much of it.
And part of the gang culture in a big way too.
Yeah,
and nobody wants to talk about. There are bona fide gangs.
Yeah, and as I was talking with Dr. Runyon, and it's interesting because he was just inquiring about things. He's just sort of getting his sea legs here, and he said, "What do you think causes that? Where there's sort of this uprising in these various areas?" He's just very professorial, asking questions. I said, I don't know, but I think it's probably multifactorial. Part of it is this revolving door, and I don't know whether that's the judges and the system and the laws recognize that we just don't have enough facilities to incarcerate people, whether it's an ideological problem. But I said, it seems to me when you look at the trajectory of crime among people, they start at a lower level, a little petty larceny here, a little minor domestic dispute there, and next thing you know, they're raping and killing people,
Well, and then, lay on top of that, what we're seeing today is the start of this Daniel Penny's trial.
Yes.
So for people who try to step in and protect others, then they're penalized. Right. I think that's a terrible thing, and I think this trial is going to be multiple weeks, and we're going to have to watch him go through that when he was trying to protect the other passengers.
It's a good point. I guess the prosecutors are going to say that he overdid it, right? He put this kind of a vascular hold or a neck hold or whatever it's called, which I guess is some kind of a legitimate restraint hold. But question is, too long? But who's got their stopwatch out when they're doing that, saying, oh, you can only do it for 90 seconds. Whoops, you went over 2.5 minutes. Now you're going to be in jail for 30 years.
Yeah, what the police in Columbia will tell you, too, is I think to your earlier point there, Randy, is there is a progression in this criminal activity. So there are the gangs that we talk about are largely a couple, and they're largely what they really are is criminal enterprises. It's really organized crime, yes. And you start out, shoplifting, rifling through cars looking for guns, and you grow up, and most of the money is made, of course, in the drug trade, the illegal drug trade, and you advance up through the ranks. And certainly that is all about guns. That's what a lot of these shootings are. I don't know how to put it in a percentage of what's what. I don't know if anybody could, but there seems to be two things. One, it's criminal-related, gun-related, gang-related shootings. And then the other is just a large gathering of people that are really there not looking for trouble necessarily, but trouble begins. So
throw a little sprinkle of Uncle Alcohol, right? And
sure.
That takes away filters and restraint.
So,
but you know what I'm buoyed about? I don't know. Maybe it's my algorithm and the network but I'm seeing more and more young people find that if you need a social cohesion, if you need social connectedness, and young people do, more and more of a resurgence of faith-based groups, young people moving towards faith groups. You see large gatherings. Where was it? Was it down in Kentucky? Where all of a sudden on a college campus at the chapel, suddenly there was this huge revival. Boy, let's get our kids. I know Tanya Heath does a lot of work, and local, African-American gentlemen who have sometimes been in trouble themselves. They're trying to get, quote, gangs of a different sort. Groups of young men and young women in a faith-based type of an orientation rather than a crime-based orientation.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. I know. My kids go to a church camp, multiple church camps every summer, and I'm shocked at how many people, how many kids are going to these camps. Because when I was younger, I remember I felt like it was just me and a handful of people, and now I think half of Ashland was at Turkey Hill this summer. So it's nice to see. And I know here in Columbia, they do the crossing actually like takes kids and they travel out of state on these trips. And so they're really popular, and it is nice to see the young kids really finding that connection.
And several groups I know take young people out. Our church takes people out for mission trips, and very young group will go out and spend a couple of weeks down in somewhere in South America or Central America. Recently out to Hurricane Helene. A lot of groups are going there as well.
Yeah, when I was in college, I took high schoolers to Costa Rica, and I think I was supposed to be some sort of interpreter.
God love you.
My Spanish was not that good, and we ended up playing a lot of charades. But yeah, it was, certainly those experiences are life-changing.
And how do we connect young people in these culturally just disadvantaged areas, however you want to define it? They don't know what a better life is. They've grown up in this culture. How do we get them into a better circumstance? That is the question of our time. And at the same time, how do we stop the bleeding? I think it's a both and, right?
Yeah. Well, we have to stop we have to address these criminal enterprises.
Yes.
That's what the cops will tell you here. That's what's not getting done. And that's what people tend not to understand. It. Crime. Everybody's concerned about it. Well, it's not all just random. It's very much more organized than people.
Small percentage, and they know who they are.
Yeah.
And so the people we're catching are these lower level people who are like down here. But what we really need to do is we need to cut the snake's head
Is there
off.
a head of the snake?
Yeah. Oh, I think so. And even more so, the people we're not catching is because they're protected. There's a reason why nobody will talk. There's a reason why so many crimes go Oh yeah, and so many crimes go unsolved. They'll take the people and take them right out of town. Move them out of town. They'll be down to Springfield or off to Indianapolis or someplace. They take care of them, and they also. It's hard to get witnesses to come forward.
No, yeah, that's understandable. Yeah.
On that note, do you know that you remember the homecoming shooting 2 years ago?
Yes.
That crime's not been solved. There's nobody in jail for that.
Wasn't that guy charged and then released or something?
Mm-hmm.
What was that all about?
Well, they just didn't.
They didn't have the evidence?
They wouldn't go to trial. The prosecutor chose not to take it to trial at the last moment, obviously because they didn't think they had the goods to convict him. And plus, he was only charged with assault at that point. So that happened right downtown, right on Hitt Street. Right in the middle of downtown.
Remember that guy was there with his mom?
Yes,
the guy that got shot in the shoulder.
Yeah. Lots of witnesses. They got video.
My son-in-law was the first one there, along with another cop.
I forgot. Yeah. That's right. There's nobody currently charged for that crime.
Man, and that wasn't just one random guy, right? This was a conflagration. Mm-hmm. All right. Hey, Mike, do you hate fishing that preys on sea? Ray Faughn, when you were out on Friday, all of a sudden he became shorter. So look, if you have elders in your sphere, whether they're parents, uncles, aunts, whatever, would you please warn them about these phishing schemes? I mean, can we now say that all of us daily probably get at least one or two of these kind of crazy, like we get one all the time. Something's been left at the USPS for you, click this button and find out about it.
I think we've all been warned about it. And I think we have warned the older people in our lives, and they still click the things. I get messages a lot from the city of Ashland saying, reminder, don't click anything, which means somebody clicked it, and same thing. I know people who work IT at large companies, and it is always the folks who are a bit older, and they've been told, they've been through training, and they still click the things. So, I don't know how we stop it.
I am resisting the temptation to go off on a screed about the erosion of our culture. I will not do that. The reason older people do that is because older people grew up in a kinder, gentler, more trusting America when there was crime, but not near to the extent there is now. That said,
and the scammers are getting really good, actually.
And the technology wasn't available then. I mean, you called someone, you wrote them a snail mail, or you wrote a check to someone. Okay, so for those of you who have Amazon Prime, there's this great movie. I think it was great. Helene thought it was great, called The Beekeeper. And it's just about a guy who's just a retired, one of these, that's sort of a typical theme these days in the action suspense realm, retired CIA, FBI, intelligence, sometimes dark intelligence. There's these like super out of the normal schemes that we hear about, these agencies, these dark agencies that are looking out for us. And then the guy is retired, but then he, either with or usually without the authority of anyone, becomes a bit of a vigilante seeking justice because the justice system just doesn't do it. The intelligence system fails. Sometimes it's corrupt in these movies. So anyway, this guy's just a beekeeper, and the little old lady, a little African-American lady who he's borrowing a barn, living in a barn, and he's keeping a few beehives. They show her, while he's out, they show him tending to the bees, and it's a beautiful thing. And then they flash over to her, and they show this sinister scene where this sort of like a psychedelic disco environment, the guy is leading a bunch of call scammers, and he's going, now here's how it's done. And he calls this lady and drains all of her accounts, and it's just sad. And when the guy gets back and discovers it, he recruits some of his inner intelligence friends to find out, get into it, and he starts digging deeper. Let's just say the good guys win. And it is a fabulous movie. It is a fabulous movie. I don't know this guy, Jeremy Statham, but he sounds like he's a Brit.
Jason Statham, yeah.
Statham?
He's been in all the Transporter movies, big martial arts guy.
Oh, okay. Well, that explains it, because, man, there are some action scenes in there. I don't know if he's doing his own stunt work, but holy cow. I think these days, it's just, Americans just want to see swift, certain, and
fun time. Now is the time that everybody gets real emotional and angry, and no matter what you say, you're favoring somebody. A good conflict. The Boot Hill man loves a good conflict, and we get 2 weeks of fierce conflict before we see the scoreboard. I love it.
Yeah, so when you look at the donations, what happens trending-wise as far as, well, the issues we've talked about, the various constitutional amendments, Prop A, so forth, and the candidates? I mean, is it pretty much people petering out on what they're donating because it's all over but the shouting? Or, in fact, is there still money changing hands?
Oh, there'll be a lot of money move around the last 2 weeks, but let's be honest, if you're giving to Mike Kehoe, it's because he's going to be governor and you'd like to have a good relationship and support him. I think that race is not particularly in doubt. Go up and down the line. Wassinger's trying to raise money to pay himself back some of the loans he made to himself. Hard to raise money for Secretary of State. Denny Hoskins doing the best he can. Some banks want to come in and get with Vivek. And I think the school choice folks were, the way the law is written down, a lot of the school choice stuff is in the state treasurer's office. And the school choice people were vehemently against Vivek Malik for some reason. I'm not exactly sure why.
Wow.
But I think they've got some makeup to do there. Some of the state Senate races, you saw Curtis Gregory win. There's some makeup to be done in a few of those. But really where the money's moving is the state Senate races. There's 3 main state Senate races. They'll determine whether there's a supermajority in the Senate. Again, I hate to say this. I'm not totally convinced that more Republicans means more Republican policies. It's the last few years meant more Republican drama, but the guys that are running are pretty good candidates, pretty good guys. So I think, it's one of those things where you think, gosh, these guys would quit fighting, but the ones that are fighting are from the Republican seats, right? Not the swing seats. So you'll see money move to the state Senate seats. I think if you're a Republican, the sleeper one you want to be keeping an eye out for is Jerry Nolte, old-time Republican. He's not. If you're a right winger, you're going to find a way to get mad at Jerry pretty easy. But there's nobody else that could win that seat. He is a dark horse candidate to steal a Senate seat from the Democrats in a very deep blue seat. I think when you turn the page on, pardon me, on that, the Democrats are trying to steal a St. Louis County seat. There's only one Republican left in St. Louis County in the state Senate. They're trying to swipe that seat, and that's where we get to abortion. It's a big deal. It's on the ballot. I don't think it'll move in the 11th. I don't think it'll move folks there simply because Kansas City folks are just not as fired up about the abortion issue as St. Louis is. It's almost like, will Amendment 3 win Boone County outside of City of Columbia? Probably so. Will it really entice voters in Boone County to get out and vote for all the Democrats? I'm pessimistic about that. Kind of the same way with independents in the Kansas City suburbs. In the St. Louis suburbs, I think we've seen numbers that show David Gregory's in a real fight to keep that seat. So if I was betting man, I guess I'd bet the Republicans take 2 or 3, keep the supermajority. That's with Stephen Weber winning his race. But we'll see. That's where you'll watch the money move around, especially this week. The money will fly around there for the last little bit of the TV buy, digital, one last mailer. That'll kind of be what to look for there. Then in these ballot measures, I mean, I think the thing I've seen since the last time we talked is I've seen some bad numbers for sports betting. The casinos are in an intramural fight with each other over will there be sports betting or not. It's all about how much money the casinos will take out of it. And Caesars Palace, casino I think everybody's probably at least heard of, is fighting with all of their peers and the Cardinals and the Chiefs about how much money the casinos should make off this. They want a better cut, and they're willing to spend multiple millions of dollars to sink this sports betting thing to what they hope come back with one that gives them more money.
Scott, flipping over the national scene and the I don't know if stunts aren't the right word, campaign appearances by the former president, Donald Trump, out, serving up fries in McDonald's, and then the kind of out there comments about Arnold Palmer and his Big Bertha, so to speak. What's your take on where they're going with all this in the next couple weeks?
Oh, they're stunts. Come on now. They're stunts. They're good ones. Look, you remember when Mike Parson went and flipped steaks at a cattleman event? When St. Louis and Kansas City were all obsessed with COVID, and Mike Parson went and flipped steaks with some folks at the cattleman, and how, to certain parts of Missouri, it's like, oh my God, it's a death sentence, and to other parts, it's like, yeah, we've been doing that for months now. It was a sign. It was a stunt. It was a good one. It conveyed a message. Donald Trump flipping hamburgers is a stunt, and it's a great one. And he's got a way of doing things that, like, it just looks funny, and it looks genuine because you're like, if this dude was being phony, he wouldn't act like this, right? I thought his McDonald's thing was outstanding. As far as Mr. Palmer, well, you know, I'm a German American, so I'm known for jealousy on such issues. But I think that's look. If you were not going to vote for Donald Trump because of some goofy thing he said, you were off this bus a long time ago. There is no way you're still pro-Trump if you're going to be offended by something dumb he says. Now, I mean, honestly, that's how people I know talk. So I'm not easy to offend. I haven't been offended since the 10/26/85 terrorist attacks at Kauffman Stadium. So I'm just not an offended person. But if you were going to be offended, and that was going to, and Trump was going to lose your vote because you were offended, man, you're off the Trump train a long time ago. Because sometimes that old Trump train gets a little too much coal in the engine and kind of goes off the tracks. This wasn't one of them, in my view.
And what the heck? Arnold Palmer's got 4 green jackets. You can't take that away from his legacy, can you?
And apparently there's other things you can't take away.
Now, we've got 15 days until the election. Of course, no excuse absentee voting starts tomorrow. Are you seeing a shift in conservative voters in whether or not you think conservatives and Republicans in Missouri are actually going to get out and utilize that early voting?
Yes, I am. In Missouri, it's not as big of a deal, pardon me, just because there's no statewide race that's going to be close enough to probably matter. But yes, overall, I am seeing. Look, Republicans are conservative. They don't like to change, normally, unless you're from St. Charles County. Then you whine all day and want to change everything. But if you're just a normal Republican, you're a conservative because you don't trust all the radical changes. I think we like to argue and fight and grouse about the fact we have to change. And then once we get our heads around it, I mean, this to me, early voting is great for, yes, low-income people, which are generally Democrats. Used to be. Not as much anymore. But I think early voting goes to the organized and the hardest working, best organized crew. And frankly, if we're starting to talk about things Republicans are, it's organized. They are very good at organizing. They are good at this. There's a guy I've watched snippets of in Pennsylvania that's had his own whole mission in life is to get people who applied for a ballot, got it, and then didn't vote last time to go ahead and turn that ballot in. I think that, you know, usually the Republicans can raise more money. That's changing a little. And usually the Republicans are better organized. I think early voting is great. Plus, man, one thing, I'm not here to take up for folks in the cities. There's all sorts of people that love the cities. But, man, if you're working for a living and you have a line that's 2 hours long to vote, man, you can't vote. You got kids to pick up. It ain't right. And I like the fact you can go early vote. I think it's fair. I mean, look, it's like with the pro-life folks. They fought so long to not have this on the ballot, to not have to go to the people of Missouri and make their case, that by the time they did, they're a little behind the 8 ball. I think that if your goal is to keep people from voting, and I don't really put voter ID in there because it's so common sense, but if your goal is to keep people from voting, man, that's taking valuable time away from persuading the people that are going to vote anyway to vote for you.
We're talking with Scott Faughn, at Scott Faughn on X. He's, of course, host of This Week in Missouri Politics and publisher of the Missouri Times. Scott, talk about your most recent X post saying bullet dodged for Mike Kehoe, referencing the Kansas City Star.
Well, I tell you, I mean, you want to talk about a curse. And again, I think I've made it clear multiple times on the show, I have extremely high regard for Crystal Quaid. I don't think it's her year. I think it's the first time, not the first time, but it is certainly a time where everyone in this state, if Mike Kehoe is your governor, from the most liberal to the most conservative and everyone in between, can look anybody in the eye and say, our governor's a good man. Our governor's the best man for the job. I think it's just not her time. However, getting an endorsement from these left-wing, just goofy socialist media outlets like the Kansas City Star is a curse. I mean, that's the last thing Mike Kehoe needs is to have a bunch of socialists and communists come out for him. people that have absolutely no feel for the folks of this state outside of the, in the Post-Dispatch, that little Central West End, Washington Avenue clique, and in Kansas City, it's that Plaza crowd going down south a little bit, down Ward Parkway. That those people are so elitist and so far out of touch from anybody in this state. Their endorsement's a curse. In the primaries, I'll never forget in 2016, the Post-Dispatch endorsed Catherine Hanaway. I immediately got 3 press releases sent to the Missouri Times from folks telling me Catherine Hanaway secured this endorsement, all through from her other campaigns. She would go on to come in fourth to fourth. I think if you're doing something to get the Kansas City Star's endorsement, you're doing something wrong.
Okay.
What you really want is you want the Wake Up Mid-Missouri endorsement, right? We saw
absolutely.
We saw a lot of our friends in the homecoming parade this weekend. Now, Friday night, it's coming up. I'm surprised you haven't already talked about it, Scott. Our listeners are wondering, do you have a prediction for a score on Friday night?
Well, thoughts and prayers to Hallsville. Thanks for coming to Wardsville Friday night. Awfully nice of y'all to make the trip. Coach LePage was very generous. He gave them 12 points. It's 56-12. I thought that was the homecoming spirit was in the stadium. He was being very generous. Yes, Stephanie, I think you should get in saying Missouri or whatever you communists call Missouri when you're in liberal parts of the state in now, because you will now be pronouncing the state correctly, as Mark Ellinger says Missouri, and every real Missourian says Missouri.
So the deal,
the
deal
Friday
is
night.
If Blair Oaks wins on Friday, I'm going to be saying Missouri next week.
Oh yeah, no, for a year. Coach LePage is bringing the Falcons to Southern Boone County. Stephanie, where from Columbia is Southern Boone?
Excuse you.
Yeah, Friday night's the big night. I'm coming. We will on Fridays. We wear green, as we will be. Columbia South will be taken over by Wardsville winners. And look, I'm sure you feel confident, probably mistakenly so. But I'm just really thankful. This is really not about me or you. This isn't about Coach LePage. This is really about all the listeners finally getting to wake up and have their coffee and have their state pronounced correctly for a calendar year.
All right. I guess that's the last word.
Well, and I just want to know why Stephanie would ever agree to such a deal with Scott Faughn. I don't understand.
Well,
in the name of
Stephanie's
fun.
an
And
optimistic person.
I'm optimistic. The Eagles have a winning record right now, and
Oh, that's
eventually
good.
we've got to be able to beat Blair Oaks.
Tell the truth, Steph. Coach Ross put you up to it.
At any event, I think we can say that the bet that has been wagered skirts around any kind of betting laws, sports wagering laws, because there's no money exchanging hands.
Correct.
This is
I'll tell you what, if this goes down, I'm just going to give those VPN his bet anyway. The government's so ridiculous.
All right,
So
Scott,
dumb.
that's the last word, and we'll check with him 2 more times before the election. I'm sure there'll be lots to talk about next and the following Monday. Our time with Scott
Monday
Faughn is
would be
always
great.
fun. Thanks a lot, Scott.
Yes, sir.
All right, there he is. What's Hot with Hannah coming up? Stay tuned.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
To me, being a Democrat, I know that they are Democrats.
Cup, but here we are again.
It has been. There's been a Stanley Cup drought on the What's Hot with Hannah.
Well, there was a special edition Stanley Cup, 2 of them.
Wow.
That dropped last week.
Yeah.
And it caused mass chaos in a lot of Target stores. People were lined up waiting for doors to open for the special edition Wicked Stanley Cup tumblers. So Wicked, the Broadway musical, there's a movie coming out that stars Ariana Grande as Glinda.
I can't wait to see that movie.
I know. My husband and I, this is crazy. We've never been to a movie together.
Huh?
And I think this one might be the first one that we go see together.
That's a revelation. You've never been to a movie together?
I know. It's weird. It feels weird to say that out loud.
Because you like to go to the movies by yourself, which
I just like going to the movies. It's just I usually go in the afternoon when he's still at work. So, but Wicked, the musical, November 22nd is when it's coming out.
This is the one.
And so Stanley Cup released an all pink Glinda Stanley Cup, and then a dark green, sort of black, like ombre Elphaba Stanley Cup. And there were fights at Target stores and mass chaos and hysteria over these special edition Stanley Cups. So
I do not get it.
The love for the Stanley is still alive and well is the bottom line of that story.
Oh, my girls just there's some extra thing now that like goes on your straw. It's like a cap or something.
Yeah.
A little doodad thing. I'm sure it costs, they convinced their grandmother to buy it for
They're like
them.
silicone kind of.
Yeah, what's the purpose of that?
Some say it's supposed to keep your cup from leaking, because that's most people's one gripe with their Stanley Cup is that if it topples over, it leaks pretty badly. So just to stop up your straw to try to prevent some of that. But they're also cute. I don't know.
I'm waiting for Hannah to burst into her cover of Dancing Through Life or something from Wicked.
Yeah, no, thank you.
You know, talking about the movies, when the kids were over, the little ones were over for Sammy's shower that weekend. They were watching kids things, and you guys had talked about the Inside Out. They were watching one or the other of those about the anxiety and the joy and the this and that. It was a good movie. I saw parts of it. I could stay in touch for a little bit of it. It was good.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it wasn't Jeremy, whoever his name, stomping out fishing bad guys.
But it
was good.
We just got a text from listener Lance at 874-9390. He says, I have a 75-pound stepdaughter who has a Stanley. It looks like she's carrying around a thermos.
That's true.
They're true. Huge. And they're heavy, too.
Yeah, when they're full.
And we saw Mayor Barbara Buffaloe in the parade, and I'm sure you were at the game, Mayor Buffaloe. Thanks for joining us. Pretty great to see those Tigers come from behind and pull it out, wasn't it? Oh, did we lose the mayor? I thought we had her on.
Hello, can you hear me, Randy?
There she is. Okay, I don't know.
Sorry.
I don't know. A little
Sorry.
technical glitch there. Maybe it's the electric.
That was all on me.
May have been the electric transmission lines to our studio.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, so it was an awesome win. I will say, to be perfectly honest, I was actually watching it from the comfort of billiards on Broadway.
Hey, it was a great day for the parade, though. I mean, you couldn't have asked for better weather, and it was great to see all the excitement. You know, when you see the people lining the streets and the enthusiasm of the various participants, especially the sorority and fraternity floats and all of the work that went into it, it was really, really quite heartwarming.
Well, and I think, that was the thing, when my husband and I were going up to the meeting spot, it's 6:00 in the morning, and there are people are already lining up to get their best spot for the parade, and it's cold outside. You could just tell, the camaraderie was starting. But then when we were in the parade going through it, thousands of people there, all of those kids, everybody's so excited about seeing it. It was just, the energy was awesome, and I cannot give enough thanks to the students that really organized this. Everything from the blood drive to the house decks to the food drive to the parade. They just did an amazing job, and I'm really impressed with them.
Hey, well, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about tonight's meeting. I notice in the pre-meeting agenda that there's going to be what I assume will be turned into a closed session to discuss the electric transmission lines and that dispute that seems to be one that's been sort of simmering for a long, long time. I guess at some point you're going to have to face the reality, you meaning city leadership, that you got to have some transmission to a growing area of the community.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's not even just about the growth of the area. It's about the piece that we play in our regional grid, right? So Columbia, we handle the transmission from the MISO grid of electricity that's going through our community as well. So the idea of making sure that we have a resilient grid, it benefits Columbia, but it also benefits Southern Boone, Fulton, elsewhere, where we're really trying to make sure that everybody has reliable electricity.
What else is on the agenda for today that folks should be knowing about? I see some appointments, really sort of a short agenda today.
I think it's because maybe they wanted to put all the energy, pun intended, into the pre-council.
Yeah.
So we're obviously going to be having a lot of conversations around that. I think it's also gearing up for the fact that we're going to have a lot of big decisions coming across council in the next coming months. We'll have our report back, as you know, later on this week about our housing study that we did with Boone County and the recommendations and potential changes we should make to our zoning codes. That's going to happen later this week at the Housing Summit on Thursday. So we know that's going to be coming back to council. We also know we're doing a transit study right now. The recommendations to that will come to us in November. So I think it's really just kind of, as a reminder, our council meetings, they're really just business meetings, right? We're voting yes on policy legislation, things that are coming across from staff. But these bigger ideas, these bigger projects that we really need to address, those happen during the work sessions. And then the 7 p.m. meeting is really voting yes, this is what we're doing, or voting no, that's not the direction we wanted to go.
Now, I think since we last talked, someone else has declared as a candidate for mayor, and that makes 2 people that have declared against you in this next race. How are you going to approach that as you begin to talk to constituents and voters about continuing in your service as mayor?
Yeah. Well, I always say, and this is probably not a normal thing for a politician, but I want contested races, right? It allows you to have conversations rather than just not knowing whether or not you got the right feedback you did to the projects you're working on. I'll say for me, when I ran in 22, there were 5 people on the ballot. So, maybe that gets a little bit much. It gets a little bit tricky with how many votes are we getting. But for me, it's really about, in the last 2.5 years, what have we accomplished? What are we still working on? And what are some of the areas that we really want to focus on for the coming 3 years? And for me, it helps to have been in this seat because I'm in those conversations, in those meetings. But more so, it's really how am I hearing back from people on the success that we're having and really focusing on pushing that forward.
Mayor, one of the issues that often comes up, and we always talk to you and we talk to the chief about the crime issues and homelessness and all, but Columbia is in the middle of a housing crisis. You talk to so many even young professionals who are at the stage of the game where they're having to pay, 30% of their income for rent, literally, because they can't afford a home the way the market is. Any solutions out there?
Well, so if you'll look at, I think we sent a press release last week that has the housing assessment that was done to us, and encourage people to tune in on Thursday when we're having these conversations. One of the biggest things that affects our housing costs, especially for first-time home buyers, is just the purchase of land. Like, you can't get a lot for under $60,000, and even then it's probably not close to where you want to be. So in that assessment, some of the things that they talk about that we can do and things that we are working on is looking at, okay, what options do we have for gentle density? I think I talked about this the last time we were on here. What areas in infill do we have where we can maybe increase how many housing units can be on it without completely changing the character of the neighborhood? Other things that we can do, the biggest thing that's affecting especially first-time home buyers and some of our low to moderate income households is that down payment, right? Many people, like you said, they can do their rent, but they can't have enough to save up for that 20% that's required. So what can we do, either working with the CDBG funds that we get from the federal government or locally by working together with community groups who are helping? What can we do to help bring down the initial cost of the purchase so that then they can go on and pay their mortgage, but we're helping them get into the house? Those are some things that I'm seeing as success in other communities. We're talking with Columbia's mayor, Barbara Buffaloe. The other day, actually, it was walking back from the homecoming parade. Someone asked me, they said, hey, they listen to the program. They know you're on periodically. They said, the next time you're on, ask the mayor what's going on with the homeless. We like to joke about it and call the homeless hotel out of a business loop. Not much going on from what this listener said. So give us an update on that, please. Yeah, so that's a project of the Voluntary Action Centers. And so the partnership that we have with it is, there were some ARPA funds given from the city and county for the construction of it for the services that they'll provide. So for us, I believe they're still in their capital campaign for still funding some more of it. And where we focus more of our services on are how do we provide those who are working to get people into housing, whether or not it's through CHA or CMCA, or with Burl, when we're talking about those that are going through maybe a mental health crisis. How do we help get support for those service agencies so that maybe we have less people going to your affectionately named hotel? Okay. All right. Well, I know people are keeping an eye on that, and a lot of concern about, not only for the homeless, because obviously with the winter coming up, people do have concern for that, but also for the appearance of and the propriety of a city that is bereft with some of the activities that go on. Yeah, and one of the things, we'll talk about, and I've had conversations, obviously, with the sheriff and with the county commission and with our local police and city manager. One of the things we talk about is, I don't want people to put everybody in together in the same lump, right? We have families that are struggling, housing instability, right? And we want to make sure we still have a supportive environment. But for those who maybe, you're seeing witness of some behavior that is illegal, for those, it's kind of, I've checked in with the chief and the sheriff. I was like, we do not allow that, right? It's kind of putting a stop to that, or that assumption that we want to allow those sort of things to happen. So I have seen an uptake in our police response to some of those instances when people call and tell us. I always encourage people, if you see something, say it to 311. If it's an emergency, please call 911, because we don't know unless we know. And putting it onto Facebook like that, okay, but also let the police know so that we can respond appropriately. And I just always want to remind people that for us, we're lucky with so many health options here, mental health providers. We have the psychiatric center at the University of Missouri, and it really does take a regional approach to accomplishing these things. And so I know I've met with our county prosecutor about going to the state, about making sure that the mental health coming from the state funding is actually going to those who are in need, and that they're not just sitting on all that money. All right.
And related, I'm talking with Mike Murphy earlier today about the fact that it has become now routine that every Monday morning, either Brian or Mike or John report on shots fired in Columbia. I mean, it's been routine. Sometimes people get hurt, sometimes they don't. Apparently, there was a shot in the head this week, which will be life-threatening, obviously, and one that wasn't this weekend. Any thoughts on what we can do about that? I keep asking you about that. We keep reporting on it. Nothing keeps changing. And you know what they call crazy? When you keep doing the same thing and nothing changes.
Insanity. Well, I always just look to the police chief and ask, what is it that you need? We obviously passed Flock at the last one that will help us close some of these cases. A lot of the instances that we had over this summer, the guns had actually been guns that had been recovered, stolen from a car. And so one of the things that they will talk about is their frustration with what should be responsible gun owners not locking their doors or keeping a gun. One was a rifle in a car that was unlocked, or even a car that's locked. Remembering that people's crimes of opportunity, they're taking advantage of that. They're taking advantage of the fact that we've been a historically safe community where we know your neighbors, we feel trust for one another. And they're taking advantage of that. And so I don't know, you guys probably see the same things I do with all my neighborhood associations will send out the list, somebody rifled through my car again last night. And it's as cops will remind us, please lock your doors, remember to be responsible, because in some of those instances, it's really just that crime of opportunity.
However, I think it's fair to say that if we could get full staffing and if we could re-implement community policing and more of a presence in those hotspot areas, I mean, we've reported on Boyd Lane area, Boyd and Clark, I mean, over and over and over and over again. And just over the weekend, Cosmo Park, when there's these gatherings gone. I mean, it seems as though having enough staff to just be around will help avoid some of the problems.
100%, Randy. And one of the things that helps us with that is the fact of us increasing pay for both starting pay as well as the retention pay for our officers here. The other thing is people sharing the good stories, right? So when I have Thursday, I forgot how many graduates graduating from the police academy that I'll be going to their graduation. We want to make sure that they know that the community supports them. And so anytime you have a positive interaction, sharing that. My worry is that when people just share some of the stories of things that they've heard, that my potential recruits are seeing that and are wondering, oh, okay, well, maybe this is not a community for me. So that's why, we've really stepped up our council, putting out there the good stories. You'll hear council members at the end of every council meeting talking about an interaction. I'll share with you an interaction that I heard. Randy, I think you would especially appreciate this. My husband had a patient who is diabetic, and he had a very low sugar when he woke up, and he was kind of, out of it. His wife was really worried. And he's a big guy. He's a really big guy. They called the cops because they needed to kind of subdue him in order to get him his medication. And he was being very aggressive. The cops took it very professionally. This could have gone south. You watch news stories from other police, other cities, bigger cities especially, and they probably would have responded maybe more dangerously to this person. Yeah. But the officers were so professional, so respectful, took care of the family, and made sure that he was subdued so he got the information.
Snakenberg, a.k.a. the Bubble Pirate, got decked out in his costume over the weekend, his pirate costume, and set up his bubble-making show at La Jolla Cove in San Diego. And that's when he says park ranger came by, wrote him up, and issued him a ticket for violating San Diego's municipal code against littering. Public resource officer said the individual uses up to 6 gallons of liquid per day, with the residual chemicals ending up on the lawn area, which could damage the grass. Snakenberg, who lives in his bubble van, says he crafts his own bubbles by hand and says it will not kill the grass. In fact, I am a bubbleologist. I practice the science, the art, and the magic of bubbles. Plans to go to his court appearance, hoping to bring attention to what he calls unnecessary enforcement, and adds they're also cracking down on other bubble people in San Diego. So now you know the rest of that story.
So let me get this right. You're talking about a guy who does like the little kids, they have the little thing where they dip the thing in the soap water and blow the bubble
Well,
out,
this
right?
is the guy who makes the bubbles that are like, you know, 6, 8, 10 foot tall and people inside of them.
Yeah,
and
he's
all
a
that.
bubble artist. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I see if I were him, but he's probably not old enough to remember a guy named Jerry Baker. Remember Jerry Baker? He was the guy that did he was like a gardener, and he had all kinds of...
Yeah, it was like on PBS.
Yeah, and he had the sort of like, who needs to go out and buy a bunch of artificial fertilizer, put some magnesium, put some Epsom salts and some... He would always talk about mixing in some soapy stuff with whatever kind of natural type fertilizer or mineral or additive you're using.
Oh, yeah,
because
where
that
he'd
helps it absorb easier.
Yeah, where he'd mix the Tabasco
There you
with
go.
the sauce and spray it on your tomato plants. and it would stick.
Yeah, you like to chew tobacco. Hey, spit in the thing and add a little Dawn detergent and spray it on your petunias and they'll be beautiful, whatever. And so I'm thinking that would have been this guy's comeback. Like look, I'm just trying to prepare the area for when you fertilize the grass, it'll be beautiful, right?
And this will... revives the environment for the little friendly pests that are in the grass.
All you can say is only in California, right,
there
John?
You go. San Diego, no less.
Oh, my gosh. Think about the myriads of people that are having so much fun watching this guy. They're out with their dog, walking the dog, seeing the bubble art, and the bureaucrats have to come along and spoil the whole thing. Sour grapes.
Those bubble heads.
forecast you gave me, I don't see any sprinkles. Not a shower, nothing. I just see nothing but dryness.
I mean, there's a chance of rain.
Is there a little
like
chance?
Early tomorrow morning?
Oh, okay.
Like maybe 3, 4 o'clock.
Oh, so early, not today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Nate Splater from ABC 17 was saying there's a slight chance of a little scattered light rain, but he was quick to point out it's not going to do much for the dry drought conditions we're dealing with again.
I've been waiting for an opportunity to. I bought some of this patch stuff for when the moles raise cane and
they're crazy this
then
year.
Then you have the little bald spot in your lawn, and so I bought some of this patch stuff that has the mulch and the seed and everything. But I don't really want to put it down when it's so dry, because I don't have a hose proximate to. I'd have to buy a 100-yard hose or 100 feet hose to get out to water it. So I'm hoping for some rain. This is the time to do that, isn't that? I think so.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, though, that doesn't look like much in the way of rain in the short term, maybe by next week.
Mike Murphy's with us, and he's been reporting on an interesting goings-on, and it involves civic government, right of journalists and citizens to find out what their governments are doing, and it involves the Boone Hospital. But before that, I promised you that, it's a crazy time. The Democrats are going crazy over Trump being at McDonald's. They didn't say anything when Kamala did the little bit trying to drinking a Miller High Life with Stephen Colbert. That was good, but Trump at McDonald's, not good. Orange man bad. Gretchen Whitmer, remember she got herself in trouble for the faux communion sort of thing, with some influencer, Liz Plank, giving her Doritos, trying to make something out of the CHIPS Act, and it looked like a rich. Here's Whitmer now trying to get in good with producer Hannah and other Gen Zers.
Go. I'm here with volunteers, and they're cooking with gas. This slaps hell up. My house party just slayed. I'm calling voters today, rizzing them up. Trump wants to ship union jobs overseas, not chill. This is gas. Trump wants to cut taxes for billionaires. I'm leaving the chat. No cap. I'm Swiftie AF. It's giving the next president.
So, what do you say? Did she pass or fail?
Well, I mean, I knew what all of those were, which means it's probably a fail.
I didn't.
Because even I'm not up on all of the Gen Z lingo, because as I've previously stated, I am an old lady. But I knew all of those, so that might not work out in her favor like she thinks it will.
What was no cap? I've not heard that one. No cap?
It means like you're not lying, like you're telling the truth.
Did you get all of those?
No. That's for real.
Okay, so Murph and I, okay. John, did you get those?
Well, cap I know is lie or fake or whatever, yeah.
And that's a trend right now, right, Hannah? They're doing like my Gen Z person wrote the script for this.
Yes.
And so you see a lot of those, even in outside of politics and business. It's kind of an online trend. So it's kind of capitalizing on a current trend in social media.
When I had the little niece pull on me, the one that I had to be schooled on was chuggy.
What is that?
She said, that's chuggy. And I'm like, I don't know, chuggy.
It's like cringy.
Oh, man. Well, what might be cringy is when you want to learn something about a government organization, you can't get the information from them. That's called the Sunshine Law that enables that from government organizations. Mike Murphy, who's, of course, a member of the Zimmer News team, is also the publisher of Como Buzz and the host of Columbia Buzz on Sunday mornings. And, Mike, you've been reporting on an interesting thing. There's a journalism guy that wants to get some information about Boone Hospital and can't get it. Tell us more.
So Boone Hospital is a county-owned hospital, right? These assets are owned by the citizens of Boone County. Its board has an elected board of trustees. They are a recognized governmental body subject to sunshine laws, no different than the city council, county commission, anybody who meets. Nobody's arguing that or saying that's not true.
I had an elected board when I ran a little critical access hospital in Northeast Missouri. Okay, they were elected, and so we got sunshine requests a lot. Okay,
yes, and they don't. You attend their meetings, you can ask for their records, and they'll give them to you. In 1988, when they decided to lease the hospital, Boone Health. It wasn't called Boone Health, and Boone Hospital, to a St. Louis company called Christian Health Services, which later became BJC. And for 30 years, the hospital was leased. They formed another company, another corporation, and put all of the hospital's business into that corporation. and that's what they leased. Okay, the entity they leased, it was called CH Allied Services. It stands for Christian Health Allied Services.
Owned by what became BJC?
No, they leased. It was the hospitals. It was Boone Health's operations.
BJC leased it.
Right.
Okay.
From Boone Health or from the trustees.
Okay.
So now there's this different entity that they leased, which is the hospital.
Okay.
Because Boone, the trustees also own the real estate. They lease out the real estate. They have their own business that they conduct. That's different. It's smaller, but now this hospital operations that they leased to BJC is a separate corporation. But they separated from BJC. Okay, so when they separated from BJC, and BJC is private, of course, so they're not subject to sunshine laws. So when they separated from BJC, they basically took that company back, CH Allied Services. That's the name of it. They took it back, and it became theirs. And as they rechanged the names and re-legalized everything, the owners of CH Allied Services are the same owners as Boone, as the Boone trustees. They're all one and the same. They kept it formed because all of their documents, everything is in that CHAS name, so they didn't dissolve it. But now what the argument is basically the trustees are saying they acknowledge that they are subject to sunshine laws, but this company that they totally and wholly own and operates within them is not subject to sunshine laws because all of the hospital's business is wrapped up inside this what is basically just a shell company for holding its business, holding that part of its business. So what the journalism professor is saying, what the Missourian is actually saying, being represented by the journalism professor so that he can be an individual going to the circuit court, is that there's no reason why this CH Allied Services business of the Boone trustees is not just as much open to the sunshine laws as the Boone trustees themselves are. Because there's no difference between I don't know what the argument would be why they're not. Now Boone Health's been making that argument forever. They made it with me. They won't give me the documents, and what they say is they have an exemption to the sunshine law. They name one of them, and they don't want to release that information. They say for competitive reasons, and there's certainly lots of other reasons that they wouldn't want that type of information released to the public. So it looks like we're going to go to Boone County Circuit Court, probably ultimately to an appeals court, and find out.
So what about
I had a question I wanted to point out to Mike. I remember back when Chris Koster was the Attorney General, he had a full-time person on his staff who was tasked with going around with entities, everything like third-class county board of commissioners, right down to the hospital boards and all. And that person was tasked full-time with telling these people what they had to comply with the Sunshine Law. And I wish that was back in the mix. Maybe something we could approach Andrew Bailey on, because it did a lot of good for those of us in the media who are trying to get sunshine requests and would get, kind of pushed up against a wall.
There's case law that very much resembles this out of Kansas City. I asked the Attorney General's office twice for an opinion or to look into this and didn't get any response.
That's the St. Luke's case. That was the one I was just looking for, but essentially, I believe. And there's a couple of different ones, but essentially I think the crux of the Sunshine Law is that you can't, a government entity can't then delegate its governmental functions to a private entity in order to shield itself from these types of laws. And there's something even called a quasi-governmental body under the Sunshine Law that can encompass some of these functions, even if perhaps you don't qualify as, a traditional public governmental body. So I think it's going to be tough here to make that case.
I've been arguing that argument for 18 months now. I left it alone. We came to I tried to get records from them. It's like 2 years ago. Was working on them, and then they wouldn't even release financial information. And then I got their financial information from other sources. I had to work really hard to do it. Wrote a major story on it last summer that they lost $145 million over the last 3 years. They were down $80 million cash, et cetera, et cetera. They finally relented now, and they provide the public, which is just me, their quarterly financial results. I've been reporting on those quarterly, and they've just insisted that they have this exemption. And I've always thought it was extremely shaky, but you never know what a judge is going to say or where this is going to go or what. I don't know. Of course, I'm not
Well, and from a private business's standpoint, because I've litigated on the other side of this as well, and it's been tough. And we've seen, I think it was the ACLU, there were some people that came in and basically said, well, if you're a private business, if you're doing anything related to the government, basically if you take a government contract, then guess what? Now you're subject to the Sunshine Law, which, as a business owner myself, it's like, okay, that, I want to be able to compete for government work maybe, especially when you're looking into like materials and stuff, without, bringing the full weight of the Sunshine Law onto my small private business. So there is a line there, and the law tries to draw that line. I think it could be drawn better.
I think to me, how this just boils down is, are they a quasi-government agency or not? And the answer to me is clearly yes. So I don't see how they can, and there's case law to support that. So I don't know how they argue that they're not. It doesn't matter how they're damaged. To me, I wouldn't think how much they want to argue that they need this privacy to be competitive or whatever. It's just simply, are you a government agency or not?
Well, what's interesting is there's a little wrinkle here in that, of course, the paper that is suing them, the Missourian, is a Missouri University entity.
Yeah.
And Boone's Health's chief competitor, as you say, is MU Healthcare. Mm-hmm. So, of course, the tinfoil hat wearers out there say, MU Healthcare is trying to get into some of the business.
I don't even think you need much of a tinfoil hat. No, I think it's like I wonder what took the Missourian so long. I'm guessing it's probably a financial consideration, because this is going to cost a lot.
Yeah.
And the Missourian is going to foot the bill.
What do we know about Mark Horvath?
Oh, he's a highly respected MU faculty member, an established journalist. He's on the faculty. He's also on the board of directors. That the Missourian is owned by a separate corporation. I guess I don't know if it's a corporation, LLC. It's called the Missourian Publication Association or something. And he's a member of the board of directors of that. So I think his role here, I think he's the chosen individual to put his name on it and go as a citizen to the circuit court. There's probably a reason that you do that other than the Missourian going, I'm guessing.
We don't have any evidence he has any personal acts to grind or professional acts to grind
The
against.
Professional acts is he's asking for documents that he believes should be available to the public.
Does he think there's something that they're doing that's nefarious?
No. But it's just like me. The way I look at it, and did look at it, and argued with them for months, and argued individually with the trustees, and is that that is a county operation, a county-owned operation, and therefore their business, I would argue, should be open to county people to see what it is. Yeah. And they won't even reveal financial information during the, much less all of. But think of the information that would be there, all the contracts with all the different docs, all the different clinics, all of the deals they've made over the years. I think they will fight to the end to keep this stuff closed.
And I think for Mark and the J School standpoint, a big part of this, and you probably could relate, Mike, that it's kind of a teachable moment for students when it comes to Missouri Sunshine Law and especially the Sunshine Coalition.
I think it's an obligation. I said many, many times on the air and have written that if the Tribune, if I was a publisher of a newspaper, and there's always been we basically always had a open meetings attorney on retainer somewhere. Yeah. If the Columbia Daily Tribune was still what it was even 10 years ago, this would have been filed in court already, and we bemoaned the lack of that. So I think it's the Missourians stepping up, and I think it's about time they did.
I know my board was educated on that. I saw to it. In fact, despite what one or more of them have said in testimony, that's not the case. We make sure that we know that, they know that. They have to be up to speed on the Sunshine Law. It's important.
It's the newspapers are about the only people who it's like automatic to fight for open records.
Yeah. Well, we'll see where it goes, and I know you'll be following this story. Sure. Mm-hmm. So, all right, well, that's good stuff. And it's good for the public to know exactly how important and how consequential these laws are for good journalism to be done. All right, when we come back, it's time for the Market Report on a Monday with Stephanie. Stay tuned.
up. NASDAQ up 0.63%, S&P 0.4%, Dow up just slightly at 0.09%. Most sectors gained on Friday. Up big were communication services and real estate, utilities there as well. I'm watching this story about, there's been so many strikes this year, Randy, and the latest is over at Boeing. Now, Boeing has been in the news for a lot of not so good things. We heard really recently that they were going to announce, this was on October 11th, they announced job cuts of 10% of their workforce, and they're going to stop making the 767s in 2027. They are just bleeding cash and have had some major PR and other fails this year. But now there was a strike that began on September 13th. That's more than 30,000 machinists were saying they needed a 25% wage increase over 4 years. That was a tentative agreement. They had ended up not settling for that. And now they say they have, they're going to vote on a new proposal, which would end the strike on Wednesday. And that would raise their wages 35% over 4 years, as well as including a $7,000 sign-on bonus, guaranteed minimum payouts, and an annual bonus program, and higher retirement contribution. So
St. Louis, are you listening, right?
Right. And I mean, we just saw the end of the strike, the port strike, basically. And what was the ultimate wage there? It was like 60% over 4 years. I don't know how we're going to keep affording these types of wages for people who are already in careers that make pretty good money.
And it drives inflation. It's a big factor in inflation.
Well, and you see contagion in some things, but I'm wondering, if you're in a union and if you're seeing hey, we can get a 50% increase, a 35% increase if we just strike and hold out. I mean, I think the incentive there is to go on strike, and we're seeing businesses, even ones like Boeing, who are bleeding cash,
stories made me think about the fact that if this turns out to be a really close election, some say it won't be. Some are saying on the Republican side, hey, this is actually going to be a quiet landslide that, just hasn't come to fruition on the polls yet. Trending is one way. You see the trends, as we said earlier, the Real Clear Politics average on the swing states now shows Donald Trump ahead in all the states by fractions of a percent. The aggregate is about 1%. But then you wonder, if it is close, will issues of election integrity, election fraud, especially since how many deeper now are we? 12 million, 10 million, pick the number, in illegals that have crossed the border. And while certain liberal outlets say, well, that's just the cases of election fraud are, you can count them on a couple of your hands, well, you only have two hands. Both hands. You can count them on two hands. Maybe. But you know what I mean.
Not everyone has two hands, Randy.
No, that's true. Oh, watch the Beekeeper movie. That was a beautiful thing. So you got Glenn Youngkins trying to clear up the voter rolls in Virginia. And listen to what he told Fox News Sunday.
With you moving ahead with it. And now, 25 days last week before the election, a Justice Department decides they are going to bring suit after this law has been in effect for 18 years, administered by Democrat and Republican governors. And this is the reason why I believe that Americans and Virginians wonder what the Justice Department is up to. It's been in effect for 18 years. It's been applied universally by Republican and Democrat governors. And now, all of a sudden, when Virginia is getting tight, it launches a lawsuit against the Commonwealth of Virginia when we are trying to make sure that citizens vote, not non-citizens.
So he's trying to clean up the voter rolls, and he claims in this clip, now again, I haven't done the deep dig I need to, but he claims that this law has been on the books, and they're trying to clean up the voter rolls so dead people, illegal people, non-citizens can't vote. And suddenly, just a couple of weeks away from an election, suddenly the DOJ is challenging his ability to clean the voter rolls. That's Exhibit A. Exhibit B, did you hear about what's going on in Michigan? Where this is according to a outlet called The Bridge, Michigan Bridge. It's a nonpartisan, nonprofit news source. So I would think they may be sort of like the Missouri Independent, as best I can tell. I looked into it.
Which is totally nonpartisan.
Well, but let's say at least they're not right. Let's say that. Okay. And what they're saying is Michigan's voter rolls list 8.4 million registered voters. I looked at the Michigan website, the Secretary of State's website. That's true. It's 7.9 at 8.49 something, but let's say 8.4 million. Nearly 500,000 more than the eligible voting population, which would be citizens 18 and older, right?
Yeah, that's a problem.
Okay. And if you look at it, Michigan plans to remove over 600,000. So that's a 600,000 gap, right, between registered voters per their site and the number of eligible voters. Okay. Here's the thing. The Secretary of State was challenged, and she comes on and says in a news report, well, no, that's just not true. We're going to, what actually the facts are, as best I can tell, roughly 200,000 or 300,000 are called inactive registrations as of 2025, after the election, and they've promised to scrub the other balance of roughly 600,000. So what is that? 4,000 or so, 400,000 by 2027. So just because they've made a promise to do this by 2025 or 2027, she's trying to claim that, and they're number one in terms of the gap between registered and eligible voters. That's exhibit number 2.
I think a big part of this is, and probably the person we ought to defer to is sitting right across from us, because Stephanie and 79,000 other GOP poll watchers are going to be out there in trenches on Election Day.
And that's what I wanted to get to, because I think, Stephanie, there is potential for fraud. And people that say that it doesn't happen, I don't know if you saw this story out of the Times, illegal non-citizens voters were 3 times more likely to be Democrat. And they chronicle about 36 cases which have been prosecuted. non-citizens who have been voting for over a decade in some cases.
Yeah, we had 2 right here in Missouri that were prosecuted in the last, I think, 5-10 years. And, I don't know how often that database gets updated, but I think, especially when we're getting into the issues like we're talking about Amendment 7, and I hear from the left, a lot of folks are like, well, they're not really voting. there were some registered, but it's not very many. They seem to have some sort of threshold that like there's a percentage, it's not happening very much. Okay, what's our threshold? Because if one illegal votes in an election, potentially cancels your vote, Randy. I mean, one illegal vote means that one legal vote essentially is canceled out. And so for me, the threshold on that is it's 0.
That's right.
It's 0.
And let's think about it. If up to date, here to date, there's been, a couple hundred, whatever. Okay, that's when we had 12 to 14 million fewer potential voters like that, right? So you start adding these numbers up and you start scaling this problem. And I would maintain it is at a minimum a potential threat. And I would also say, isn't it in some way an undiscoverable threat? Because in some of these stories, when you hear the other side talking about it, like, oh, nothing to worry about, like you're saying, they sort of poo-poo it. They always say, well, after all, they have to affirm, they have to sign under threat of punishment that they're eligible, that they're a legal citizen. Well, I mean, really? I mean, all they have to do is just say that. Well, all they have to do is lie.
And then the other argument I've heard is, well, they're not really like, they don't speak good English, or like they were at a government office and it was the government official that was like coercing them into registering to vote. And they excuse it in that way. Like, that's not an excuse for allowing these folks to either get on the register or to actually vote. And so I think, the best defense we have right now is, and I think photo ID is a big one, although we've seen that, that people are getting really good at, fake IDs and other ways to scam people. But the best defense is we have boots on the ground and people in these polling places watching what's going on. And I think you can probably still sign up to do that as of today if you want to volunteer. It's a long day. I'll be in Arizona on the ground working on election integrity with a bunch of other Missouri lawyers.
Thank you.
But yeah, we need people just observing what's going on because, presumably, you've got a one-off issue here or there. You can protect against that. But having, armies of observers helps you identify some sort of more coordinated or expansive issue that could, and ultimately you're looking for an issue that could has the potential to change the outcome of the election. And so when you see, one error in one location, fine. When you see it start popping up, or you see one particular polling place that is having all kinds of errors, that's when you really start to have concerns about, is every vote counting, and is everyone only voting once? And that's the real concern. We want everyone to vote and make it easy for everyone to vote, but we don't want people voting twice, and we don't want people who aren't eligible or aren't legal voters voting.
Have you ever had a feel for it from your attorney's organization that how many of these, presumably southern border immigrants would actually go and vote, and would it be something they'd take upon themselves, or are they gathered up by a bigger group on the left to physically take them to the polls and put them in there to vote?
I think it's going to be something that we're looking for this year. I have not seen that, John, because in the past I've always been on the ground in Missouri, and we have not had that issue here in Missouri as far as I'm aware. But certainly being in a place like Arizona, I'm sure I'll be learning a lot about, what other types of issues that are state specific that you look for. In Missouri, in the past, we have, I think the main issue that, that we've seen, and it was many years ago, even before my time, is, long lines and then Democrats running into the judge to say we need to hold the polls open in certain, Democrat leaning areas. And that was, a real concern. And we haven't seen that. And we've had really clean elections for the last many cycles here in Missouri. But certainly there are, and they've even we've added photo ID. They tightened some of the other election integrity provisions in Missouri's law. So I think I'm not expecting any issues here. But again, it's really tough if you don't have people on the ground observing and there's an error, unless someone's observing in real time and documenting in real time, it's really hard to go back and undo it later. And so that's why it's so important to have eyes on it.
Well, remember too that you have. Here's the story. Okay, I'm just one of these stories where there's been about 36 prosecutions from the 2016 election, and here's exactly this illustrates what can happen. Sean Morales Doyle said that non-citizens have no incentives to vote. However, none of these deterrents seem to stop Juan Francisco Landeros Morales. He joined a line of people at a food pantry one day and ended up registering to vote. He cast ballots in 2012 and 2016. His attorney said Mr. Landeros Morales came from Mexico, is illiterate in English, so someone else filled out the form and had him sign it. Mr. Todd said he had handled a half dozen non-citizen voting cases, and the story was usually the same. I mean, come on, this seems too easy.
They say these people are confused, and sometimes maybe they come from countries where voting is like mandatory, and so they think they have to register to vote. But either way, they're, whether, again, it doesn't excuse it, whether or not they got duped into by some, liberal bureaucrat government employee. It's really, and again, what you're hearing here and what we saw in Missouri, those are people who got caught.
That's it.
How many other cases? I mean, there are only a handful of people got caught. Yeah. Well, how many others are still flying under the radar?
I told you the story of one of my friends that went and asked a local clerk at the desk, hey, what does someone have to do? Just show a voter ID and sign that they're a citizen. And they said, sign that they're a citizen? That's all they have to do? Oh, yeah. Well, we just trust them. That was the word.
Well, and I think also, the other thing that people are, I think, forget about Amendment 7 is not only, because they're like, well, it makes non-citizen voting legal. Well, it's already illegal. Okay, fair. But what it does is it prevents local governments from coming in and allowing illegals to vote in your city elections. And so we've seen that in big cities elsewhere. Like Columbia city government could say suddenly that anybody who's, any resident can vote for Columbia City Council. Now, we wouldn't, and we've seen a little bit of that I wouldn't put it past folks in Kansas City and St. Louis. So passing Amendment 7 prohibits those local governments from then authorizing illegals.
There's
to vote.
no way that it tightens it up. Let's talk to callers real quick. Rick, quickly, what's on your mind?
Well, I noticed in the Constitution from day one clear through Amendment 25 that the Constitution never mentions a female president. It's always he or his. Now, I'm not promoting this. I've noticed it. But as I see it, constitutional law, Kamala Harris cannot be president.
Okay, Rick. You're getting some stink eye from producer Hannah and Stephanie here. I'm just telling you.
Well, I'm not promoting
I know. All right. Thanks for the call. That's an interesting thought. Stephanie?
No
stink eye from Stephanie over here, John. I'm getting the stink eye from Stephanie, and I just asked a question.
You better watch your pronouns this morning, Doctor.
Chris, how you doing?
I'm not going down that road.
I'm not either.
I just want to throw out a couple of things. One is,
remember, I supported Carly Fiorina in 2016 for what it's worth in the primaries. Okay,
right.
So there you go.
That's your testimony. I just want to say, it just seems like an obvious screw up to let these people vote in local elections, because when the regular election comes around and they don't speak English, why would they think they couldn't vote? And I don't know about you, my ballot has all the local and the national stuff on it. But I also noticed that in federal law, all this, it's illegal for these people to vote. There's also a clause in there that says the only excuse is if the person who is voting, who is not a citizen, believed it was okay for them to vote. That is actually in there. So they've given them a loophole all the way around. And I wonder what kind of a, legislator puts that in there, unless they just want these people to vote no matter what.
Yep.
And you can go look that up. I'm not making that one up.
We'll check it out. Okay, thanks,
like
Chris.
you said there, somebody told him.
All right. Thanks much.
I was actually looking for this statute as we were talking to the last caller, but Missouri actually has a statute, section 1.030, that says plural includes the singular, masculine includes the feminine. And so
Lance into the end zone. Touchdown, Missouri.
Well, Mizzou pulls it out as Brady Cook comes back into the game, having missed more than half of it. Came back late in the third quarter and rallied the team on to a victory on Saturday. They dropped in the standings, though. Very interesting in the college standings. John, any thoughts on that?
Mizzou gets no respect.
Yeah.
I mean, literally. Day one with the SEC, we've got no respect when it comes to standings. But it's okay. We're 6-1. We'll take it.
No, you're right. I mean, why not? Who cares? We'll just keep being the underdogs and the dismissed. Now, after the game, though, Stephanie, you pointed out how emotional Brady Cook was. It's a little bit long, but it's worth listening to.
You're emotional. What brings you to tears?
Oh, I am emotional. I am. Mizzou means so much to me. The first 6 games, they haven't gone the way I wish they would have in a lot of ways. And to come out here the first drive and get hurt and to be down, to think I'm not going to come back in the game and then find a way. And we just manifest it. We get it done. We fight, and we win. It's just, I'm emotional right now.
It's sweet.
Aww.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was good.
They worked on him for 2 solid hours before he took the field again.
I would be fascinated, and I guess it would be a HIPAA violation, but man, I would give anything to talk to the trainers and the doc and find out what did they do, because I saw him before he came back in. They showed a sideline view. He's jumping up and down. I mean, on an injured ankle. I don't know what they did, but it's remarkable. So we got to give a big shout out to that to the crew. It's a fabulous job that they did. So beautiful.
I also
job.
want to give a shout out to some of our friends. We were at the homecoming parade on Saturday morning, and Dave, whose daughter is in the Hickman marching band, he was there to watch her, but also he stopped by and said hi, so thanks, Dave. And then I also bumped into a lovely couple from Boonville. I got to go to my first concert at the amphitheater there in Jefferson City, John. It was quite just a nice...
That's a neat venue, isn't it?
Oh, my gosh. It was wonderful, and the weather was beautiful, and there were some listeners from Boonville sitting right behind me, and they were quite nice.
And our friend Matt Nichols came up from behind and tapped me on the shoulder. He says, "You're blocking my view," because we're up on a little riser, so it was pretty fun.